Good day, everybody. This is the Ecclesiarch here, back with some more Warpforge, and today I'm delivering episode 2 of the Voice of the Community. If you guys don't know what this is, and if you missed the first episode, this is a new series that I started, which has a goal of gathering feedback from the player base and then sending it right over to Everguild, in this way ensuring a better communication between Everguild and the community. So, and what better way to do that than a survey where everybody can express their opinions. So thanks to everybody who has actually participated in this. It's going to be there for every episode, so stick around. Now guys, just a quick rundown. I made a survey where I generally had some general questions and specific ones. For first, I just asked which factions were considered to be fun to play, and then I asked which factions were considered to be like frustrating to play against, then what people thought about the new ranking system, and then detailed answers on what would make factions more fun and less fun to and more fun and less frustrating to play against, as well as what they like or don't like about the ranking system, and finally to leave general feedback about the game. And I'm going to be trying to break it down for you like as best to my ability as I can. So let's quickly just go through the first part. As you can see, so basically the question was the same for everybody. Every faction, the faction is incredibly fun to play, and mark how much you agree, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most. And as you can see, Necrons are currently considered to be unfun by most of the people who voted. The highest percentage was a 2, followed by a 3, which is not good. For Eldar, surprising to me, actually, they ranked very high. They mostly had positive feedback, with very few people saying they're not fun. For Ultramarines, mostly they were in the middle, still leaning towards bad afterwards. Mostly, I assume, maybe perhaps the nerfs, but more on this in details later on each faction. Let's just first go through the results. Black Legion was identified as 3 as well, but mostly fun, with Tau being generally fun, Orcs being like in the middle, but mostly still considered to be fun rather than not fun. With the Tyranids, it was like 3 and then equal fun and unfun, so they're literally sitting at 3. With Sisters of Battle, they are once again at 3, but more people thought that it was less fun, but I mean, not by a large difference. And Genestealers were officially identified as the most fun faction, with the highest votes at 5. Perhaps this could be recency bias as well, a little bit, but we'll see about that. Now, in terms of which factions are the most frustrating to play against, it should not come as a surprise to most of you. It's the Genestealers, Necrons, and the Sisters of Battle, followed by Tyranids and the Orcs. Okay, then Black Legion also sitting at 22%, with Ultramarines, Eldar, and Tau actually being the nice guys. Now, well, we should have seen the vote on Ultramarines last season. That would have been fun. But let's now get into details. So there's a lot of written feedback as well, which I read through completely, and I'm going to break it down to you guys, for you guys, like what people think. Let's actually start by what makes a faction fun. And this should not really come as a surprise to anybody. The feedback on this was, as it always is, more archetypes to play, more ways to build your deck, more warlords playable. That's pretty much what it is. Like, for example, the reason why, let's say, the Tau were actually voted very fun back in the day when they came out, and even fun now, is that despite not all of their builds being super strong, you could still play battle suits, you could play the Kroot, you could play the drones, infantry even, and you would get away with it. You would be able to win some games. And in terms of being competitive, also, of course, there are some things that are going to be better than the others, but you could still play all 4 of the warlords and not cry about how bad your warlord is. Maybe some of you will disagree with me, but I think that's why the Tau are mostly voted as fun. While some of the factions are actually suffering from the same problem, I was actually surprised why Black Legion was voted fun, because Black Legion actually is prime example of the problem, because no matter which warlord you play, you're kind of stuffing in 90% of the same cards. So that's a big problem. And the Ultramarine, for example, Ultramarines being so low is a surprise, but I think this is mostly due to nerfs, because Ultramarines actually have quite diverse decks, with aggro, big marine, and vehicle actually running quite different cards. But currently they've been stomped, so most probably people, that's why people are kind of voting low. But anyway, back to the feedback. So people said we need to have all of these warlords playable, and we need more diverse options, like give us a vehicle deck and an infantry deck and maybe like a tactic focused deck or something, right? With the Gene Stealers currently, obviously there is one deck that is super strong, but they have Uprising, they have the Ambush, which is maybe not that good, they have a control deck, they have an aggro deck, so you could play a lot of different stuff with the Gene Stealers, and all three warlords are somewhat still playable, so that's already a mark of a nice faction. Now, I played both the Cancer deck as well as the control deck, and both were doing pretty well, and of course they're built quite differently, and I've also seen people run an aggro deck, which is also quite different from the others. But I still do believe Gene Stealers might be a little bit of a recency bias. But anyway, so once again, people are asking for diversity, and that's what makes the factions fun to play. And that should not come as a surprise to anybody. And the big demand from the players is to buff useless cards of these factions, because you don't have to create new cards to make these factions balanced. You just have to buff the useless ones and give them a role, just like they kind of did it for the Necrons a while ago and the Ultramarines. So that can actually be very, very good. Now, what makes a faction frustrating to play against, and why do we have this pattern here? Well, first of all, why Gene Stealers on the top, Necrons and Sisters of Battle? Well, there is the same pattern here, guys. This is all three, and let me tell you, this is not Necrons, this is Oricon, this is not Sisters of Battle, this is Junith, and these are not Gene Stealers in general, it's the Safa Rampart Infestation. So all of these three decks have the same thing in common. At some point, they just become unbeatable. Because for Necrons is the Scarab deck, which tells you, okay, you either draw the AoE or you're just going to lose the game, because as soon as I spam the board, then I'm going to do the blades, or I'm going to do the self-destruction, and you're just going to be deleted from the game. Draw your AoE or lose. With the Gene Stealers, well, it's I'm going to vomit my hand at 6 energy and you just lost the game. With Sisters, it's I'll get to 4 faith and I'm going to keep spamming those Sisters with Junith, and you're most likely going to lose the game. And actually, it's quite accurate how Gene Stealers are on the top, because they're the most consistent at getting what they need, because Safa always has the combo 100% of the time with the correct deck. With Necrons, like maybe it's a little bit less consistency, but it's Oricon, so he's gonna get the cards he needs. And with Sisters of Battle, I mean, Junith usually manages to get that with the relics, but if she's super unlucky, she might fail to do it. But the idea here, and the main takeaway from here, is energy cheats and uninteractive decks suck. So let's take a look at the pattern. Green Horde, nerfed. Overwhelming Swarm, nerfed. Tactical Insight, nerfed. Drilling Sight in Horus Heresy Legions, nerfed. What else do we got there? Then there's the Gene Stealer card, Rampart Infestation, breaking the game currently. What does that tell us? Like, abandoned supplies and supply lines from HHL, nerfed. This all tells us that energy cheat sucks and it ruins the game. Every single time Everguild releases energy cheat, like 90% of the time, they have to nerf it afterwards, because for the most part, it's ruining the game. We even had like this moment in Horus Heresy Legions where there was a massive nerf to energy cheat cards all across the board, because it showed that it's not good. And I think Everguild should really learn that lesson, because currently it's ruining the game again. So energy cheats need to be seriously put like put to the knife, basically, because it's just breaking the game. On top of that, like uninteractive stuff, like for example the Scarabs, you draw the card, if you don't, you lose. Same with the Sisters. I'm just gonna get to 4 faith and I'm just gonna keep spamming the board in an unending way. Once again, not good. So all of these things are toxic, and players have identified this as a problem. Now, the next thing is to talk about orcs and the Tyranids. It's a similar case. With the Tyranids, it's still the Ravenous Hunger problem, because in itself, the whole thing there is toxic, because that card has already been nerfed like, what, 3 times or something? Mostly because, okay, I'm playing a Tyranid, I drop a big unit, oh, you can't kill it? Well, now you're gonna die. Or maybe I'll just drop a stealth, I'll drop a Death Leaper, and next turn I'm just gonna kill you, right? So it's not really that fun, all that fun to play against, and it's certainly not helping that Overwhelming Swarm still exists, and Tervagon can still sometimes just vomit at you. I think a lot of people are actually underestimating how good that is, but anyway, that's another problem. And Tyranids in general have been identified as unfun because, once again, they only have a few cards that work, and their gameplay style is always the same. And yeah, it's never fun to play against the Tyranids, honestly, because you're always frustrated. Does he have the Ravenous Hunter? Do I already lose or not? With the Orcs, players have also identified and expressed another problem, which is the armor. Now, before we go crazy, I totally understand, like, a lot of people have directly asked to remove armor from Warlords. Some of them even saying just remove it from the game. I totally understand that probably there are low chances of that happening, because I don't think that a mechanic that was added to Warpforge like exclusively is going to get just removed. I think the better option, which some players have also expressed, is to give us actual good anti-armor cards. Now, currently we have 2 in the game, which is Fire Prism and Bore Through, but both of them are a problem. Now, let me explain why. Because these things are like deal 3 damage, but deal 6 if the target has armor. But the problem is that 6 also gets reduced by armor, which is kind of stupid, because that doesn't make it a dedicated armor card. Because let's say if the target has 2 armor, I deal 4. If the target has 3 armor, I deal 3. So, like, what am I doing? How is this an anti-armor card if increasing armor, reduces the damage still? I think what should happen is that these cards should be able to get their damage through the armor directly. So it should be like pure damage. It should ignore armor. And if you want, you can rebalance the damage, reduce it to 5 or whatever. But give us actual dedicated anti-armor cards. And that could actually give Everguild a way of solving their other problem, which players have said, we don't like these vanilla cards in each faction and we need them to do something. Take some cards from each faction and make them dedicated anti-armor. Like, take the Predator from that is currently just a copy-paste of the helicopter and just doesn't fly, the only difference being that it can hit the Warlord as well. Instead of that, make it an anti-armor card. Make, for example, the Dominion from the Sisters anti-armor. Make the Tank Busters and the Rocket Boys from Orcs anti-armor. And, like, there's so many things that you could just use as an anti-armor option. So I'm even going to share some suggestions later on separately for that. But yeah, I think there's a great opportunity there to just do that, okay? Quite a few players have also said that they in general don't like permanent effects on Warlords, like armor and attack bonus like Draconian or so on. Some players have actually said that that just ruins the game as well. On top of that, players have also said that one of the things that makes the Sisters of Battle unfun to play is that the whole prayer mechanic is badly made, because it's too easy to interrupt. And mostly Sisters are going to be getting their faith from either a very lucky early game board, for some reason when the enemy is unable to take your units out, or they're just going to use the relics of St. Catherine, and if they get that in the early game, then they become insanely powerful, and that's not fun. Because it's like, oh, I drew the relics, then I'm going to smash you. I didn't draw the relics, or I guess I just lose. So people are asking for different types of fixes for that. Some are saying just make it only to make the prayer only shut down on attacks, or maybe just add early game units, low cost, that actually give you faith on rally or on death or something, and in return just reduce the effectiveness of the faith-based cards. So there's a lot of things that players are suggesting there. But overall, once again, what the players are saying, nerf the energy cheats, nerf and change the types of cards that are just like uninteractive, like Scarab Spam, for example. make the vanilla cards playable and give us dedicated anti-armor, or just remove the armor overall. And as I said, some people still ask that all permanent effects on warlords are kind of, you know, ruining the game for them a little bit. So that's pretty much what it is for the feedback. Overall, that's like the best I can actually give you all of this feedback that was here. Now let's actually take a look at the new ladder system votes, which was, I think, the shining gem of the current Warpforge updates. And as you can see, guys, most of the player base, like more than 50%, think that it is a great addition to the game, while 21 think that it's all right, and like 11% of players think that it's bad, and the 4% thought that it was like not so good. Now let me explain in general what the players said about it, why they like it, why they don't like it. Most people love it. And honestly speaking, it's bringing a couple of very important positive sides to the game. Number one being that now somebody cannot just spam the OP Warlord to victory. That's actually the only thing that is saving us right now from hating the game just like the previous month. Because in the previous month, the Ultramarines made it unplayable and people just stopped playing, including myself. I was just waiting for the new month. I was like, no, fuck that, I'm not playing this game. And I would have done the same this month if it weren't for the rank system. Else, everybody I would face would be either Safa or would be a Scarab, and I definitely don't want to be playing a game like that. But with a new ranking system, people are kind of forced to play different factions, and I've been seeing a whole different array of warlords, and I'm loving it. On top of that, players have also said that the new way of just giving it your faction's peak and not just the current rank is great, because it discourages camping. Because at some point it was just like, oh, so I got to 3,000 points, now I'm just gonna camp and not do anything. And yeah, so yeah, it's definitely overall identified as a very positive thing by the players. Some are saying this is the best thing that has happened to the game. However, there was also some bit of a negative feedback, mostly due to people saying that 4 factions is a little bit too much, maybe 3 could work, and people saying that like this is more aimed towards the veteran players and not free-to-play players, because currently the people who don't really have a collection are having a hard time playing ranked and competing. That was pretty much the only negative side that was identified. Some are saying just reduce the requirement to 3, and some are just saying that it's bad because, you know, not everybody has that amount of cards, right? But overall, people seem to think that it's a very positive thing. My personal opinion is that it is absolutely one of the best things that has happened to the ladder, because it's currently saving us from another month of doing nothing because of the crazy bad spam here. And finally, guys, the general feedback. Now, I'm going to give you this as detailed as I can on what people think should be fixed in Warpforge. Very well. Now, guys, I have a couple of main points written out because there was a lot of feedback, like 48 responses, but I took like the main bulk of it just to explain what the people are asking for. And yeah, let us actually begin. And I'm going to say a couple of like specific details as well. But let's first go with the general thing. So number 1, buff useless cards. As mentioned, one of the biggest things that the players are asking, just buff the useless cards, make them playable, which will also add diversity to each faction. Number 2, don't make energy cheat cards or make them extremely situational and specific, or better yet, just don't make them because they're ruining the game. Don't make playstyles that have no counterplay or are uninteractive. For example, like either draw AoE or lose the game like Scarabs. Now, we've already mentioned those 3. Number 4, hotfixes. Now, this is very important. Last month, a good hotfix could have saved the game, because a lot of people just stopped playing the game because nobody fixed the Ultramarine problem, which lasted for more than a month, which was abnormal. So what players are asking for, once again, and I totally support it, is we need hotfixes. if something is breaking the game, just like the Gene Stealers are currently, release a hotfix. Just fix that single card. Like, for example, currently, you could just take a look at the Rampant Infestation or Safa's ability, which draws a stratagem, and alter either in order to shut down this disgusting combo and do something about the Scarabs, because these two things are currently just breaking the game. So hotfixes are super necessary, which also brings me to the bugs. Now, there have been some serious bugs that Everguild have directly and very quickly fixed. Like, for example, there were the bugs with the Paragon Warsuits and stuff like that. But when it used to hit your own warlord, and that only shows us that Everguild is capable of fixing such things like when necessary, right? So hotfixes once again should be not only for bugs but for balance as well. But there are still currently very many, like there's many bad bugs in the game. Like, we still keep disconnecting sometimes. There are still cases where both players are registered as a victory and they each see the opponent as disconnecting. There are still the problems of not being able to click on your deck in order to see how many cards you have there until you like smash your mouse or keyboard or screen or whatever. There's still bugs where cards disappear during the game and the game gets stuck. There's still the bug where players are somehow able to generate extra defense cards. All of these things need fixing as soon as possible. Now, the next thing that is here is like better UI and better gameplay features. Mostly people are asking for the same things that they had in HHL, like sharing replays, having a better UI in the shop, having a better victory and defeat screen with all the details, just like Horus Heresy Legions, like where you had the time of the gameplay, where you had the damage dealt and stuff like that, enemy warlord. So that would be super awesome to have that in the game currently. So overall, like, why not implement all the good things that we had in HHL right into Warpforge in terms of gameplay features and UI, right? I'm not talking about stuff like initiative and things like that, because I can totally understand that might not fit in the current gameplay of Warpforge. Although I'm not saying that it definitely doesn't fit. What I'm saying is, not gameplay wise, like implement features that just made the game experience better, and we just made the UI and everything else just more pleasant. So why not get that? And why not have that as soon as possible in Warpforge as well? The next point was, once again, the armor problem, armor on warlords. We need either that to go, or we need dedicated anti-armor cards. Once again, I repeat myself, and I will say that there are the perfect way to do that. Just make all the anti-armor just pass through the armor while rebalancing the damage on it, and make some of the vanilla cards in each faction be anti-armor or anti-tank or something like that. The next point is also very important. We need to fix the warlords that are just unplayable. For example, Galaron is unplayable. Now, I totally understand that a lot of people like him. I like him too, but he's definitely not good right now. There's Galaron, there's Zaxstruck, there's also Harken Worldclaimer. A lot of people are playing that warlord, but I still think that he's just the worst Abaddon. Chaos in general suffers from that by every warlord being a worse Abaddon, and nerfing Abaddon is not a way out. We should buff those other warlords, like Zaxstruck is still bad. So there's like a lot of warlords that are just not being played, and we would love to see some buffs on them as well, just like we had on Keltok that suddenly catapulted him into a competitive warlord, right? So also, once again, the faith mechanic has been identified as a problem, because the faith mechanic currently is a big problem, because once again, there are few reliable ways to generate faith. There's like the prayer, there's like the relics of Saint Catherine. If I get it, I win probably. If I don't get it, I instantly lose. So that's like a very, very bad thing. And also coupled with Junith being able to absolutely smash you if she gets 4 faith is just not good. I think it was a good thing adding like special faith mechanics to each warlord, but we should get like different things. It needs rebalancing. We need early units that can generate faith, maybe through death or through rallies or so on. You could have like this martyrdom thing when they die or they're sacrificed, for example, they generate faith. But of course, in return, you can make you can up the faith requirements of some cards, which would be very, very good. Now, the next thing that players have also mentioned, once again, was a better in-game shop. So a lot of people are asking that we have, once again, just like HHL, a veteran in-game shop, so that we actually have two parts of the shop, which everybody thinks was great in HHL, and make it faction specific, just like HHL. That would actually make it more more comfortable for most of the players. That's another thing that we have mentioned. And of course, there was a big question that is always being asked: where is the where is the management on Discord or the community manager? People are still waiting and asking for that since day one, because contact with Everguild is not easy. So currently, I do understand that we are doing this through content creators, but obviously the player base is still asking for one, so that needs to be considered. Now, on top of that, some players have still said that daily missions are a problem. They need to be like they should be less faction specific, and they should be more general. There have been a couple of complaints on that. But other than that, mostly is the same thing. The bugs, the balance, the large amount of unplayable cards, lack of hotfixes, and those kinds of things. I would also like to mention that for me personally, and for quite a few players, the Sisters of Battle 40 level defense card is a big problem in this game, guys. Not because like I'm lazy to grind for it, but I'm actually quite close to getting it. But there's the problem there. That card is very strong. It's like the Tyrannid defense card. It's extremely powerful, but it's locked behind a big level of the Forge. This is actually the first pay-to-win thing ever in Warpforge. Because come on, guys, if you think Warpforge is pay-to-win, come on, you're just not getting it, man, because there's a lot of free-to-play players here. The stuff is way easier to get than other CCGs, especially compared to HHL, because in HHL you had to get it through events and you first have to learn to play the game to do that well. While in Warpforge it's so easy to get stuff. Like, of course, you're not gonna have a full deck in like 1 week, but what I'm saying is, like, full collection, I mean, it's still free to play friendly. And one of the best deals that they have, if you want to throw in some cash, is the premium campaign, which basically when you complete it, you have the faction almost complete. But this is a free to play, this is a pay to win option, because you're hiding one of the most powerful things behind a level 40 Forge, which makes it very frustrating for other players, because if I pay money, I get something that they don't have access to. Like, and I'm not talking about like getting this something that they will get in 1 week or 2 weeks or even 1 month. This is going to take months for some people to achieve, which is just not fair. So I still advocate to bring that down to 20 so that it's much more manageable. Now, there were some other suggestions as well, guys, and if I haven't mentioned that, I promise I'm going to put that to episode 3. But currently, I think this is where we're going to end the episode, because you know, there's only so much that we can discuss at a time, okay? There are some smaller details and great suggestions, and I promise I'm going to make it in episode 3. But other than that, please leave a comment and tell me what you think, and I'll be sending this to Everguild. And EG, please take this into account, because we've had some very cool things recently, like, for example, a new ranking system. Pretty awesome. The Genestealer faction is really cool, aside from the Uprising. So yeah, it's going to be very, very cool if you take these things into account. Thank you very much, and Ecclesiarch out.